Hey everybody, and welcome to Breaking Biotech, the podcast where we get into everything biotechnology related. My name is Matt, and I want to thank you all for joining me today. If you like what I'm doing, please like, subscribe, or leave me a comment. Let me know what you think of my take on all these companies or different companies that you think I should be focusing on or anything else. And tell a friend if you think that they could use if they could gain something from watching any of these YouTube videos. So today I'm going to give an update on a bunch of different companies and based on just the earnings reports that we had come out recently. So a few companies have reported their earnings, and I think there's a few noteworthy things that we can talk about today. So I'm not going to do a deep dive into the science really, but really just give an update on what I think is going on and where I think the companies are going to go moving forward from here. So the company I was going to talk about are Madrigal, AIMT ADMS. I'll touch on Illumina and Spark. So there was some drama going on with that. They took a huge hit this week based on their update from their phase 2 trial. So we can see here that I had a nice drop in my portfolio from just over 15 to about just over 10, and that is largely due to the drops in Madrigal and Spark. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And let's get into it. So first one I'm going to talk about is ADMS. So they reported their Q2 earnings, and these are the numbers that we're very interested in because they have their product GoCovri, which has an indication for dyskinesia, levodopa-induced dyskinesia in Parkinson's patients. So we had some goals, or I had some targets in mind that I was hoping that they would reach, and so far they're doing okay, I think. And the market, continues to be bearish on them. They closed at the end of the week at 23.10, which is not very encouraging given the numbers that we saw. So I think the negativity around this stock is due to the sort of lackluster revenue that they pulled in, because the number of scripts that they've been getting from this medicine is actually quite within the line of what we would expect. So they announced that Q2 they had 3,430 paid scripts of GoCovri from 970 prescribers. So if you look at the original marketing material for the medicine, they mentioned that there was 6,500 total prescribers that they were going to try to target. And for our model of what I thought, I was hoping that by the end of the year, they would get 4,000 patients and about $40 million in revenue. And for that, if we calculate back the net present value, the stock would be worth about $60. So they reported that they achieved $7.6 million in revenue for Q2. So that puts the first half of 2018, their revenue at $10.1 million. So that's only a quarter of what we would expect for the entire year. And, given that Q1 had such a low amount of revenue as they're ramping up this medicine, it's likely that the second half of 2018 we'll see a larger boom in revenue, because we really want to see that $40 million in revenue by the end of this year. And so they're already at 3,400 patients, and the goal that I had set out was 4,000 patients, so I think that's pretty good so far in terms of the end of 2018. But their stock continues to be lackluster. So I'm not very excited about that. Other things they talked about in their earnings call is they're enrolling patients for their phase 3 for the MS walking study, which would bring in a lot of revenue if they could get that indication. They mentioned that most insurance plans are covering the medicine except for this donut hole that they talked about for Medicare, which is kind of a cap that Medicare has for patients that use all of their Medicare budget. So other than that, they talk about they're not telling us information on the refill rates, which I find is relatively curious. I don't know why they wouldn't actually just tell us how many customers are refilling the medicine, but they mentioned that they're happy with the durability of it. So I think they might be waiting to collect all the data for the year for us to give us like a complete picture of what's going on. But I don't know, that seems surprising because we want to know how many customers are actually coming back and using the medicine again before we can really put our faith behind it. So so I'm going to hold on to the stock. I'm not going to double down because I really want to see how these numbers look by the end of the year. So gonna hold off on this, but disappointing that it continues to stay below 25. And even though there was an original increase in the stock right after the report, it was quickly sold off. So, we'll see as it goes. All right, so I want to get moving on to Aimmune. Most boring stock in the last few months. All it's been doing is going between 28 and 32, and with no news really. So this, I think we're really waiting here is for them to actually start selling the medicine to people. So they saw really good data in their peanut allergy AR101, and they're going to submit a biologics license application to the FDA in the second half of this year. So hopefully that goes without any problems. There shouldn't be any problems, but it's just going to lead to a lot of boring stock action. So the milestones that I have here, they have other trials, like extension trials that they're looking at for peanut allergy. So, I don't think it's going to be anything surprising. They're also changing the age group for their study. So that's interesting. They're doing another study in collaboration with Regeneron and Sanofi with an adjunct, this antibody that's been shown to help in different allergy indications. So I think they're trying to see whether or not AR101 is the effect that they see is enhanced by treatment with this medicine here. So that should be interesting. But the other ones that are going to be real catalysts, I think, are whether or not they can do this product, use their system in different allergies. So if they can do it for egg, if they can do it for walnut, I think that would really set them up to be this world leader in desensitization therapy for different food allergies. So that would be really neat, but we really need to see how the sales go for AR101 in peanut allergy. So we're probably not going to see that until actual sales numbers until next year at some point. So this stock is going to continue to be relatively boring until then. Okay, so moving right along, Madrigal Pharmaceuticals, we have been seeing this huge fade from their highs of about 320, and I have a couple different theories on why I think this is going on. So the original thesis on why I did not want to sell around here, which in retrospect is kind of stupid, if I could do it again, obviously hindsight 2020, I would have sold about 80% of my shares here, which wouldn't have been that many, but and then just let the others ride and see whether or not we can get more upside. But because I decided to hold on to all of my stock, I've seen a big decline in my profits from this company. So it's not ideal, and I'm really considering just going ahead and doing that and taking the selling around here just so I can lock in some profits, because I bought around, I think it was 150 originally before the news of their phase 2 trial came out. But I refuse to sell because I'm waiting for this buyout, these buyout rumors to actually materialize. But in retrospect, buying the company at its peak value isn't always ideal for big pharmaceutical companies. So they might wait for the stock to actually settle on some range before they make an offer. So not sure exactly what's going to happen with that. I also think that the negativity in Madrigal is going in line with the positivity that's been seen in Intercept Pharma, ICPT. And if you've read any of my previous stuff, you know that I think that the drug is trash. I don't think it has a lot of long-term value given that it has so many negative side effects. But ICPT was upgraded by Goldman and Wedbush. So they saw a big increase in their price to well over $100, which I think is paying way too much for Intercept. I just don't think that they might have a first mover advantage if they see positive results in phase 3, but I don't think their drug is going to last very long because people are quickly going to switch to something else that has a much better safety profile, which you can see in the Madrigal drug as well as the Viking Therapeutics, which is a similar drug to Madrigal. So, I think that's kind of what's going on now too. And if Intercept does get a buyout, that might change how people look at Madrigal, even though I think they're also a buyout candidate. So we'll see how it goes. I am considering selling some stock just so I can lock in some profits, and I feel like kind of an idiot for not doing it before, but hey, this is the game that we play. All right, so the last thing I want to touch on today is Spark therapeutics. So, for those of you who have been following the gene therapy space, it's kind of an interest of mine. So Spark is one that I had a decent stake in, and then I sold a bunch, and then have been holding on ever since. So right around, what is it? It's the end of 2018, there was some negativity in their data presented at, I think, ASH or something, and their stock saw a large decrease, and then all this hype went on, and they continued to get bullish increases in their stock. And then a few days ago, they announced their earnings report, and they gave an update on their phase 2 data for, I forget what the product is called, but their hemophilia A product in the gene therapy space. And they saw good numbers in terms of a reduction in annualized bleeding rate and annualized infusion rate, which every company also sees. So BioMarin and Sangamo in particular, they also see very good numbers in this way. And when it comes to actually getting the drug to people, the prescribers want to see the least amount of side effects possible. So unfortunately, where is it here? So out of the patients, so I hate that these trials have such a few number of patients, because it's hard to know whether or not it's just a one-off thing and these patients were particularly sensitive if they had a bad effect, or if it's actually a systemic thing that the company needs to worry about. So 2 of the patients who got their highest dose, the 2 times 10 to the 12 vector genomes per kg, they had a reaction, an immune response to the vector, and one of them had to be hospitalized, and they had to get corticosteroid injections to lower the amount of inflammation that was going on regarding the use of this vector. So this is the news that has people very upset, and it's because Sangamo and BioMarin, neither of these companies have needed to use any corticosteroids, and neither of them have had to have any hospitalizations or anything, and they're able to get the reduction in bleeds. So on its face, it looks like it's not very good for Spark. I'm not as negative as everybody else, and maybe I'm biased, but with every one of these therapies, you have to understand that once you hit a certain amount of virus, you will get a reaction in people, an immune response. Now, if your virus is perfect, maybe not, but your immune system is programmed to detect things, and once it does detect something at a certain level, it's likely to trigger a response. So the unfortunate part is that Spark needs this many 2 times 10 to the 12 vector genomes per kg in order to actually get an effect, it seems. So they didn't talk about the low doses and whether or not they saw a positive effect. Yeah, so they don't really break down how the different doses were able to lower bleed rates, but they just say that across all of the doses, they've seen this 97% reduction in annualized bleed rate. So there's kind of some uncertainty regarding how effective different doses are and how that all breaks down. And the Spark CEO, she said that by the end of the year, they're going to have like an overall wrap up of the study, and they're going to present clear data at that point. And that would be nice, because there's a lot of unknowns that we really want to get answered. And so far, Sangamo and BioMarin have been a lot clearer in this respect. So one thing also to note, so BioMarin is much further ahead than Sangamo and Spark in this area. They've already enrolled for their phase 3 trial because they saw very good data in phase 2. So in their phase 2 for BioMarin, this is the Q2 results that I have up here. They had very good numbers in terms of bleed rate and annualized infusion requirements, and the number of vector genomes that they need is actually higher than Spark, but their vector doesn't seem to cause as much of an immune response as Spark, and they're able to get sustained expression of factor 8. Now, their expression level is lower than Spark. I don't think I can pull it up here. But all you really need to get is this like 10% factor activity level in order for you to reduce the number of annualized bleed rates. So I think it's much more dangerous to get too much expression of these factors, because then you get thromboembolic events that can be life-threatening. So that's something that BioMarin is actually really good at. They get this like subtle increase in expression in these patients, and they're able to lower the analyzed bleed rate. And and they're not getting any serious adverse reactions. So BioMarin is doing really well in this area, and they're also further ahead of Spark and Sangamo. So I'm considering taking a position in BioMarin to hedge my position in Spark, because they're doing a very good job at this. Sangamo, on the other hand, they're still early in their phase 1-2 study for SB525, and here they just have these like 3 bullet points that people seem to be very bullish on, but didn't really tell us very much. So they haven't had to use steroids. They were able to get what they call therapeutic factor 8 activity levels, and they see a dose-dependent effect. And of course, if you have too few number of patients, I don't know how easy it is to say that it's actually a dose-dependent effect, but it is what they say. And so here they also mentioned that the factor 8 activity level above 12% is of normal is able to reduce the negative effects of hemophilia. So this is all they really need, is to get around higher, or around 12%, to get the good effect that hemophilic patients want. So I think I'm going to buy some more stock in Spark. I haven't yet, because I bought some other stuff that I'm going to tell you guys soon. But I think the negative effect, or the negative sentiment around Spark, is a bit overblown. I think that the drug still has a lot of potential, and even though they saw these severe adverse events, I really think that the phase 3, they want to move ahead in phase 3 with this 2 times 10 to the 12 dose, which I think might be a mistake. If they go ahead with that, I'm going to be a little bit cautious, because they're going to have to talk to the FDA about this, and given that 2 patients out of the 7 who had this dose had those negative effects, you worry about doing a larger trial, whether or not you're going to put people's safety in jeopardy. And it's also making me a little bit worried, because if they're seeing a positive effect at their lower doses, why are they using such a high dose if they're getting a positive effect in the low dose and they're not getting any severe adverse reactions in that dose? So let me couch my answer. So I may buy more Spark based on how this plays out. So I'm going to wait and see whether or not their data comes in, their final report on their phase 2, and based on that, I'm going to decide whether or not to buy more or not. I am, however, going to buy some BioMarin, because I think that they are going to lead the pack when it comes to gene therapy in hemophilia. They also have a lot of other drugs in the pipeline that I think will do well. But based on what we're seeing here, I think the reaction against Spark might be overblown. So we're going to wait and see and see how it plays out. Sangamo, I'm not even going to look at. It's way too early, so I don't want to be part of it. Sangamo also looked at the non-human primate data of the different doses of vector and how it led to different factor 8 levels. So BioMarin it just gets this subtle effect. Spark gets more and Sangamo gets higher. I don't know if they're trying to be proud of seeing a 229% increase in factor 8 levels. This is very high, and this could probably lead to severe thromboembolic events. Maybe they're only using, I'd have to look at the dose. Yeah, so they don't talk about the dose here, but I assume they're not using this dose because you don't want to get this effect. But the potency of the vector is important if your vector is likely to give some sort of immune response. So for Spark in particular, this is important because their 2 times 10 to the 12 dose down here gives an immune response in some people. So the potency is important for that reason. So I don't know, but the other thing is that we don't always see that the non-human primate data doesn't necessarily compare to the human data. So this is just a surrogate using a different model, but the Spark data has shown that the non-human primate data doesn't necessarily match the human data. Anyway, and so the other thing too is the BioMarin. So this is the BioMarin data. We've seen here that, or I guess this is only the peak, but BioMarin in their 6 times 10 to the 13 vector genomes per kg, they're able to get this relatively stable amount of expression of activity in patients that have been on the drug they got 1 infusion, and up to 78 weeks they're still able to see that expression. So overall, gonna buy some Biomarin. Gonna hold off on Spark, but consider buying more based on how the rest of this year wraps up for them. And that's pretty much the wrap up I want to talk about with regarding those 4 companies. So, let me know where I'm off base, guys, and we can talk about it in the comments. So overall, I'm in line right now with the XBI. The S&P 500 continues to chug higher, even though we might see a little bit of increased volatility, as Friday was a relatively hectic day in the markets. I didn't talk about Illumina, but they're continuing to kill it. I might increase a little bit of my position here because I think they're just such a stable increase in growth company. I increased my position in Fate when it was down about under $10. I thought, there was no reason why it was down that much, so I bought a little bit more. So my increases, or the percent increase that I'm seeing right now is due to that. I also bought a little bit more Bluebird on the dip here. So my cost basis is now like 160 something. So still below 0 at that point, but it's a long game a little bit. So with that, I want to thank you guys all for watching. Let me know what you think, like, subscribe, or leave me a comment. And with that, I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for watching.